That piece of junk is a perfect fit for you. My son-in-law sneered when my late husband left me a rundown gas station. But when I discovered the bronze key and unlocked the hidden door, I uncovered a secret that could ruin his entire life. I'm glad you're here. Stay until the end and tell me which city you're watching my story from. I want to know how far it has reached. The small room behind the church was cramped, filled with the smell of old wood, and the air was so stifling I could barely breathe. I chose a chair in the corner, trying to shrink into myself as if I could escape the scrutinizing eyes that examined me. My daughter Sarah sat at the head of the table next to her husband Michael. Little Lily, my 9-year-old granddaughter, clung to her mother, her large, round eyes wide with confusion. I knew Michael had never liked me. He always pretended to be polite, but in every word and sideways glance, I felt his contempt. Mr. Thompson opened the folder and began to read aloud in a monotone voice, reciting each line of David's will. Sarah was bequeathed a small savings account, enough to sustain her for a few years if she managed it carefully. I saw Michael clench his fist and purse his lips, visibly annoyed. He had surely expected more, perhaps a house, a piece of land, or at least something of greater value than that modest sum. Sarah lowered her head silently. She gently placed her hand on Lily's shoulder as if trying to comfort the girl, or perhaps herself. Then Mr. Thompson looked at me. "Mrs. Emily," he said slowly, "according to Mr. David's will, you will inherit the Star gas station." The room went quiet. I felt every eye fixed on me, but I didn't raise my gaze. The Star Station, that name carried so many memories. It was where David began his working life, where he poured his sweat and his heart from the days of his youth. But now it was nothing more than a heap of rusted debris, abandoned on the outskirts of Chicago. No one stopped there anymore. No one even paid it any attention. I was aware of this, and evidently everyone else in the room was as well. Suddenly, a sharp laugh shattered the silence. Michael slammed his hand onto the table and gazed at me with a mocking grin. "That piece of junk suits you perfectly," he repeated disdainfully. "I thought Sarah's inheritance was pathetic, but it turns out yours is even worse." Some relatives chuckled quietly, while others merely shook their heads as if I were an absolute joke. They whispered among themselves, but I heard every word as clearly as if they were shouting, each one like a knife piercing my heart. Did Emily really believe they would leave her anything significant? I never liked her since she joined this family. Every sentence felt like a blow to my chest. I knew they never truly accepted me. From the very first day I entered David's family, a poor girl from a small town in Illinois, they looked down on me. People would say she's not on our level. She simply got lucky catching David. But I never cared about wealth. I loved David and he loved me. Together, we built a family. We had Sarah. We led a simple life, but it was filled with love. Now, with him gone, I was alone, surrounded by whispers that lacked any trace of compassion. Sarah looked at me with tear-filled eyes, but said nothing. I understood she was torn. She wanted to defend me, but didn't dare speak out in front of Michael. She had always been like that, afraid of displeasing him, fearful of the criticism from relatives, anxious about making things worse. I don't blame Sarah. I only felt sadness. Sad for her and for myself, both of us trapped by the glares, the words, and the expectations of others. The reading of the will concluded in a heavy, tense atmosphere. One by one, everyone slowly got up. The murmuring began anew, but I didn't want to listen anymore. I just wanted to leave, to escape those looks of pity and mockery. As I entered the churchyard, Michael suddenly approached me. A smile played on his lips, as sweet as it was insincere. "Mom, I was just joking earlier." "Don't be so tense," he said softly, but with a hint of purpose in his tone. "I think you should sell the gas station to me. I have a contact who will buy it immediately." "Why would you want to keep that heap of junk?" He patted my shoulder as if trying to comfort me, but I felt the weight behind every touch. I nodded slightly without meeting his gaze. "I'll think about it," I replied in a whisper, so quiet it almost vanished. Michael's smile, cold and unsettling, stretched across his face before he turned away, leaving me standing alone in the middle of the churchyard. I watched him walk off, saw Sarah take Lily's hand and follow her husband, and suddenly a wave of loneliness crashed over me like a tidal surge. A few days after the funeral, I decided to go to the Starg. I had no idea what I was hoping to find. I knew I had to do something to rid myself of the emptiness that constantly haunted me. My old car struggled slowly along the dusty road, leading to the outskirts of Chicago, where a solitary gas station stood amidst fields of dry grass. When I pushed open the rusted iron gate, a creak echoed softly, like a welcome from the past. The scent of old gasoline, oil, and decay hit me strongly, forcing me to pause. Standing in the middle of the small, dust-covered room, it felt as if David was still nearby, wiping his hands on a greasy rag with that familiar smile of his. I began cleaning carefully, taking my time. Each sweep of the broom and every piece of trash I picked up seemed to be a way of reconnecting with my memories of David. That gas station had been his dream, his workplace where he worked tirelessly, fixing every pump and chatting with customers in his deep, warm voice. I still vividly remembered those afternoons when I used to bring him lunch. I would sit on the old wooden chair and listen as he talked about his grand plans, either opening another gas station or just buying me a new car. Now, staring at the rusty pumps and broken windows, I couldn't help but feel a sharp pang of sadness. This place, once filled with laughter and hope, had become nothing more than a ruin, a subject of mockery for everyone, including my own son-in-law. I knelt down to scrub the floor, trying to hold back my tears. But every time I recalled Michael's mocking words during the will reading, my heart ached. "That piece of junk is a perfect fit for you." The phrase echoed in my mind, an open wound that refused to close. I wondered if David had ever imagined his gas station would be scorned in such a way. Did he leave it to me intentionally as a test, or simply because he had nothing else to give? I shook my head, attempting to banish the dark thoughts. David wasn't like that. He always had a reason for everything, even if I didn't always understand it. As I continued cleaning, I heard the sound of an engine approaching. A shiny truck pulled up in front of the gas station, raising a cloud of dust. I immediately recognized Michael's vehicle. He stepped out in his suit, as immaculate as at the funeral, but his eyes were colder than ever. Sarah was in the back seat, holding Lily close. Neither of them appeared to want to be there. Michael slapped the side of the truck with his hand, raising his voice as if he wanted everyone to hear. "Mom, I'm here." He held up a stack of papers with a smirk that couldn't hide his arrogance. "Here's the transfer contract for the gas station. I already got you an excellent price. Sign it, and let's get this over with." I stood up straight, wiped my hands on my apron, and tried to keep my voice steady. "I haven't decided yet, Michael. I need more time." My words were soft, but inside I was seething. Did he truly believe I was naive enough to sign immediately just because of a few kind words? Michael raised his eyebrows, and the smile gradually disappeared from his face, replaced by an annoyance he couldn't conceal. "Mom, nobody comes to this gas station anymore." "Why keep it open? People only come here to mock it." He took a step closer, lowering his voice to a threatening tone. "You don't want them to think you're stubborn, do you?" "Leave it to me. Just sign, and it's finished." I shook my head, my eyes fixed on his. "I told you I need more time." Michael's brow furrowed noticeably, not used to being turned down. He turned back toward his truck, but before he reached it, I heard Lily's voice, small but clear, coming from the window. "I really like this place, Grandma. It smells just like Grandpa." That innocent remark warmed my heart, even if only for a moment. Michael spun around, his expression hardening, and suddenly rolled up the window. Through the glass, I could hear him scolding Lily, his tone harsh. "Sit still." "Don't talk nonsense," the engine roared as he sped away in a cloud of dust, leaving me standing there with a heavy heart. I returned to my chores, trying to concentrate so I wouldn't dwell on Michael's attitude. Yet, Lily's words kept echoing in my mind. It smells just like Grandpa. She was only 9, but she sensed what the world seemed to have forgotten, that this gas station wasn't merely a heap of rusted metal. It represented David's hard work, his life, a part of him. And now it had become part of me as well. I grabbed a rag and continued wiping the dust from the old counter where David used to sit and keep the books. Every time I touched these relics, I felt his presence there, smiling, reminding me that everything would be all right. Then, as I opened an old wooden drawer, a small wooden angel suddenly slipped out, rolling across the floor. I was startled and quickly picked it up, afraid I might have broken it. It was tiny, but heavier than it appeared, carefully carved with gentle eyes that seemed to look directly at me. I ran my hand over its surface and noticed a small crack at the base. Curious, I pressed on it, and to my astonishment, the crack split open as if it had been meant to. My heart hammered in my chest. My trembling hands nearly dropped it. Inside was an old bronze key wrapped in a faded piece of cloth, quietly waiting. I took it in my palm, feeling the cold metal against my skin. I looked up, taking in the deserted gas station. The afternoon sunlight poured through the broken windows, casting light on dust particles that floated in the air. Everything was quiet, yet an unusual sensation grew within me. That key wasn't there by chance. David never did anything without a purpose. He had left me this gas station, and now this key seemed like a message, a clue I needed to find on my own. I clutched the key tightly, caught between fear and curiosity. Michael could laugh all he wanted. The relatives might look down on me, but I knew this Stargaz was not just a pile of junk. It was David's legacy, and perhaps it also held the key to rediscovering myself amidst such overwhelming loss and suffering. I slipped the key into my pocket, determined to come back tomorrow and uncover what it was meant to reveal. The following afternoon I returned to the Star gas station with a restless heart. The bronze key rested in my jacket pocket, cold every time my hand brushed against it. It was small, aged, yet it seemed to whisper to me, urging me to uncover the secret David had left behind. The Chicago sky was calmer that day. The rain had ceased, but a chill still ran through me as I pushed open the station's rusty iron gate. The screech echoed as a reminder that this place had been abandoned for far too long. I stepped inside, and faint light filtered through the broken windows, illuminating the dust motes suspended in the air. Everything appeared the same as the day before, but it felt different. Something was waiting for me. I was certain of it. I sat in the old wooden chair, took out the key, and placed it on the table. The light cast a dull glow on the bronze, revealing small scratches as if it had been held in someone's hand for decades. I tried fitting it into every office drawer and rusty lock on the metal cabinets. None of them fit. I shook my head and chuckled at myself. "Emily, you're imagining things?" I muttered, attempting to dispel the strange sensation that persisted. Maybe I was expecting too much from what everyone else considered trash. I tossed the key onto the table and decided to continue cleaning to keep my mind occupied. I began to move a heavy metal filing cabinet in the corner of the room, where David used to store some old toolboxes. It was heavier than I anticipated, and as I pushed with all my strength, I heard a strange sound. Not the screech of metal scraping against the floor, but a faint cracking. I paused, knelt down, and carefully examined the worn tile floor. In the corner where the cabinet had concealed it, there was a different kind of crack. It didn't resemble one caused by age. It was too straight, too precise, as if intentionally crafted. My heart pounded fiercely. I seized a nearby iron bar and pried up a tile. A fragment broke away, revealing a small round metal cover with an old lock at its center. The instinctual feeling intensified more than ever. I hurried to the table, grabbed the bronze key, and with a trembling hand, inserted it into the lock. It fit perfectly, as if it had been designed for it. I turned the key. A dry click echoed, stirring up a small cloud of dust. I pulled on the metal cover. It was heavy, but I persisted. Beneath it was an old wooden ladder descending into a dark space. A damp, musty odor rose, as if the area had been sealed for decades. I retrieved the flashlight from my bag and aimed it downward. The steps were covered in dust, stained but sturdy. I yearned to go down and discover what awaited me. Yet part of me was afraid. What had David concealed, and why had he never confided in me? Just as I was about to step onto the first stair, the noise of an engine outside broke my concentration. My heart surged with alarm. I quickly shut the cover, threw a nearby tarp over it, and sat down in the chair, pretending to write in an old notebook. The door of the gas station swung open and Michael entered, carrying a bag of coffee and a box of pastries. His smile was as insincere as ever, but his eyes were cold, calculating, as if he were scrutinizing everything around him. "Sarah asked me to bring this to you, Mom," he said, placing the bag and box on the table. "By the way, let me remind you of something. You can be stubborn, but this gas station isn't worth holding on to." I nodded, trying to keep my voice steady. "Thank you, Michael. I'll think about it." Yet his gaze never left me. He moved slowly around the room as if searching for something. His eyes lingered for a long time on the corner covered by the tarp, where I had just hidden the cellar door. My heart seemed to stop. Had he noticed something? I hurried to speak, my voice trembling slightly. "How are Sarah and Lily? Is the little one okay?" Michael turned back. The smile returned to his face, but it was still laden with purpose. "Sarah is the same as always, worrying about Lily to the point where she's not eating or sleeping. And Lily, Mom, that girl is always saying nonsensical things." He emphasized the word nonsensical as if trying to remind me of Lily's words the other day about her grandfather's scent. "Mom, I'm serious. Don't let this gas station keep making you suffer. Sell it. Let me handle it." I only want what's best for you. I forced a smile, avoiding his gaze. I know you're worried about me, but I need time. This is the last piece of David I have. I want to hold on to it a little longer. Michael shrugged, but I clearly saw the annoyance in the way he clenched his fists. Suit yourself, he said in a cold tone, but don't take too long. Not everyone is patient. He turned, but not before casting another glance toward the tarp, then walked out to his truck. The engine roared to life, and the vehicle vanished in a cloud of dust. I sank into the chair, sighing with relief, though my heart remained heavy. Michael hadn't simply come to persuade me. He was suspicious of something. I could sense it by the way he looked at the tarp, the way he spoke as if he knew I was hiding something. I looked at the bronze key resting on the table. It seemed as if it was staring back at me, daring me to uncover the secret David had left behind. That night, after dinner at my house, I returned to the Stargaz station when everything was shrouded in complete darkness. Chicago was unusually quiet. The only sounds were the chirping of crickets and the wind rustling through the dry grass. Standing in front of the station door, flashlight in hand, I wore David's old work gloves like a lucky charm, feeling a strange sense of reassurance. My heart was pounding, not just from fear, but from the strange sensation that I was about to uncover a part of David I had never known before. I took a deep breath and pushed open the rusty iron gate. Its creak sounded like a warning, yet I did not stop. I had come too far to turn back now. I pulled back the tarp covering the cellar door. The flashlight cast light on the round lock embedded in the iron plate. The bronze key felt cold in my hand, and as I turned it, a click sounded once more, almost like an invitation. I lifted the cover, revealing an old wooden staircase shrouded in darkness and mystery. A musty odor rose up, causing me to hesitate for a moment, but I proceeded down step by step, careful not to slip. Each step creaked beneath my feet, as if whispering stories long forgotten. The beam of the flashlight revealed a small basement with stained concrete walls covered in dust and cobwebs. In the center stood an old desk, a crooked filing shelf, and a large safe that looked like a guardian watching over everything. I approached the desk, the flashlight trembling in my hands. On the surface was a worn leather notebook covered in dust. I opened it and found yellowed pages filled with strange numbers and symbols written in faded black ink. I couldn't make sense of any of it. These were David's notes, but they made no sense to me. I flipped through the pages one by one, searching for a clue or explanation, but all I encountered was more confusion. David. My David. The man I had shared more than 30 years with, who had always confided in me, had kept such a massive secret. I opened the desk drawer. My heart pounded as I saw the sealed envelopes arranged inside. I opened one and my heart stopped when I saw an ID card with David's picture but bearing a completely different name. Carlos Mendoza. I opened another envelope. This time it was a passport, also with David's photo but under the name Eduardo Ramirez. Trembling, I laid them on the table, my head spinning. Why did David need these things? Who was he truly? The man I loved, Sarah's father, the one who held me every night and spoke of simple dreams? Did he lead a life I was completely unaware of? I sank into a chair, my hands clutching my head, trying to halt the flood of thoughts, but it was impossible. I had to uncover the truth. Rising slowly, I approached the large safe tucked away in the corner of the basement. The bronze key once again fit perfectly into the lock. I turned it, and the metallic click echoed loudly as the safe door gradually swung open. Inside, there were stacks of dollar bills bound with rubber bands, which at a quick glance amounted to millions. I had never before seen so much money. Alongside it, there were folders of documents stamped with the word secret, and a small wooden box containing several USB drives. I picked one up. It was small, yet surprisingly heavy, as if it contained an entire world I wasn't prepared for. Just then, I heard footsteps outside the gas station. I leapt back, nearly dropping the USB drive. Heavy footsteps echoed clearly on the gravel. Instantly, I switched off the flashlight. My heart was pounding fiercely in my chest. I hurried up the stairs, carefully closing the cellar hatch without making a sound. Through a crack in the window, I saw the headlights of a car cast a blinding glare across the area, forcing me to squint. Two strangers dressed in black jackets stood directly in front of the gas station, speaking in hushed tones. One held a cell phone and shone a flashlight over the office area. The beam of light swept across the cash register where I had been sitting just minutes earlier. I pressed myself against the wall, holding my breath, terrified that any noise might reveal my position. My heartbeat was so loud I was convinced they could hear it. Nobody's here, one of them said in a rough voice. Are you sure it's here? The other responded coldly. Absolutely. She was here all day. If there's anything, it has to be here. I wasn't entirely sure what they were discussing, but one thing was evident. They were after the same thing I had just uncovered. That basement, those documents, the money, the USB drives. Someone was desperate to get their hands on them. I waited with my back against the wall, drenched in sweat, until the sound of their motorcycle faded into the darkness. I sank to the ground, gasping, still clutching the bronze key in my hand. It was at that moment that I truly realized. The Star gas station wasn't merely David's inheritance. It was the hub of a vast secret, a secret that many would kill to possess. I turned my gaze toward the hatch, feeling a mixture of fear and anger. David had concealed this from me all those years, but he had also left me this burden, a responsibility I wasn't sure I had the strength to carry. The next morning I opened the Star gas station, but the sense of peace I once knew was gone. As I bent down to pick up a piece of paper, I noticed the wind had sneaked in beneath the door. I noticed a white envelope concealed beneath something, and my hand froze as a chilling sensation washed over me. Carefully, I retrieved the envelope. It was lightweight, but upon opening it, the single sheet of paper inside caused my heartbeat to nearly halt. There was only one sentence, written in bold, angry strokes. You'd better not touch what your husband left behind. No signature, no name. Just a warning as cold and sharp as the edge of a knife. I quickly slipped the note into my jacket pocket, trying to maintain an outward appearance of calm. Yet, inside, questions swirled chaotically. Who had left it? What did they know about the basement, the documents, the money? And most crucially, how much did they know about David? I glanced around the gas station, clutching the cross hanging from my neck as I whispered a prayer, though the fear still clung to me like the darkness outside. Around noon, as I sat in the old wooden chair trying to organize my thoughts, the roar of an engine shattered the silence once more. My eyes immediately recognized Michael's shiny truck. He stepped out perfectly dressed in his suit, but this time he was not alone. Two unfamiliar men, tall and muscular, dressed in dark shirts, followed closely behind him. One of them had a long scar across his cheek and a gaze as sharp as a razor. The other moved slowly and deliberately, tapping his belt with his fingers as if assessing the situation. Michael smiled with his usual expression, yet I could detect the underlying tension in it. "Mom, I brought some partners to see this land," he said softly, but with an undercurrent of pressure. "They're very interested in the gas station." "What do you think?" I stood upright, forcing my voice to sound firm and stern. "I had already told you, Michael, that I'm not planning to sell right now." The man with the scar curled his lips into a half-smile and his gaze swept across the office, stopping directly at the corner where I had hidden the cellar door. He tapped his fingers on the table, tap-tap, maintaining a steady rhythm as if trying to gauge my reaction. "You'd better think it over," he muttered in a deep, cold voice. "Good opportunities don't come around twice," Michael interjected with a dry smile. "Mom, I just want what's best for you. This gas station is worthless now. Sell it, and you'll have enough money to live comfortably." I stared him directly in the eyes, silent. I understood that this wasn't merely about selling the gas station. He was after something bigger, what I was hiding in that basement. Eventually, Michael gave a signal and the two men departed. Before getting into his truck, he turned back to me, lowering his voice. "Don't make me repeat myself. I don't want things to get complicated." His words, though gentle, carried a threat. As the truck faded into the distance, I remained standing, my hand clutching the edge of the table, fighting the anger and fear boiling inside. Michael was no longer just my son-in-law. He was turning into a danger, and I knew those men weren't ordinary business partners. I had barely settled down when I heard hurried footsteps outside. It was Mrs. Davis, my neighbor from across the street, hurried in with a worried expression on her face. "Emily, I saw some strange guys out there last night," she said, her voice trembling. "They were smoking and staring at the gas station for over an hour. I thought about calling the police, but they left before I could." I took her hand, offering a weak smile to comfort her, though inside I felt like everything was crumbling. Were they the ones who left the note, or were they Michael's men? I thanked Mrs. Davis and assured her I would be cautious. But as soon as she went out, I sank into the chair, my head spinning uncontrollably. That night, just after locking the gas station door and getting ready to go home, a black car suddenly pulled up on the opposite side of the street. The headlights shone directly into my face, so intensely that I had to squint. The car window rolled down, and before I could get a good look, an empty beer bottle was flung out, bouncing on the gravel below while a wild laugh echoed through the air. "Stay out of what doesn't concern you, old woman," a voice shouted, and the vehicle sped away, leaving me standing there, clutching my keychain so tightly that it hurt. I stared at the broken bottle lying on the road, its shards shimmering under the moonlight, and a sudden feeling of being stabbed in the chest washed over me. I got into the car, but my hands trembled so violently that I couldn't turn the key in the ignition. I sat there in the darkness, listening to the frantic pounding of my heart. The warning on the paper, the scarred man's gaze, the wild laughter from the black car, all of it felt like ropes tightening around me. I thought of David and the years we had spent together, of those nights when he held me close and spoke of simple dreams. Could he have known that one day I would be pushed to such a dangerous edge if he had left that basement on purpose for me to face the shadows he himself had hidden? Everything remained unchanged until one Monday at noon. I was sitting in the kitchen, a cup of cold coffee in my hand, when the phone rang. Sarah's voice came through, filled with panic and trembling so intense that I almost dropped the cup. Mom Lily was nearly taken by a stranger at the school gate. The teacher claimed I had sent someone to pick her up, but I clearly hadn't authorized anyone. My heart seemed to stop. I didn't have time to ask questions. The only words I managed to say were, "I'm on my way," before I ran to the car, my mind racing. Lily, my precious granddaughter, would someone be willing to hurt her? The thought cut through me like a knife, and I pressed the accelerator without caring about the dusty road to the school. When I arrived, Sarah was at the entrance, holding Lily tightly in her arms. The little girl clung tightly to her mother, her face still pale and her small hands trembling as she grasped Sarah's clothes. I quickly ran over, knelt down, and embraced Lily, feeling the warmth of her tiny body in my arms. "It's your grandma." "Are you all right, my love?" I whispered softly, trying to keep my voice steady to avoid frightening her further. Lily nodded, but her eyes remained wide with panic, as if she still couldn't comprehend what had just occurred. Sarah looked at me with red-rimmed eyes, her voice trembling. "Mom, if I hadn't answered, if the teacher hadn't asked, I don't even want to think about it." I took Sarah's hand and gently guided both of them to a quiet corner near the entrance to figure out what had happened. Another mother, whose son was in the same class as Lily, mentioned that a man in a white shirt and a baseball cap had arrived at the school, claiming that Sarah had sent him to pick up the girl. He had a truck parked nearby with the door open, as if he was ready to leave immediately. Fortunately, Lily's teacher, who was always very cautious, called Sarah before allowing her to leave. When she discovered that the story wasn't true, she kept Lily, and the man hurriedly departed, leaving behind only a cold gaze. Hearing that sent a chill down my spine. The image of the truck flashed in my mind, and I immediately thought of Michael. Last night, just before he left the gas station, he had looked at me with cold eyes and spoken in a threatening tone. "If you're going to be stubborn, someone else will pay the consequences." At the time, I took it as an empty threat, but now, those words felt like a dagger piercing my heart. How could Michael dare to do something to his own daughter? Yet then I recalled the expressions of the two men who accompanied him, scrutinizing the gas station, and I realized Michael was no longer merely my son-in-law. He had become a real threat I could not dismiss. I gazed at Sarah, trying to keep my voice steady despite the fury boiling inside me. "Sarah, I don't think this is a coincidence. Michael is trying to force me to sell the gas station. I suspect he has something to do with this." Sarah shook her head, her eyes brimming with tears. "It can't be, Mom. Michael might pressure you, but he would never hurt Lily. I'm sure it was just a coincidence. He's her father." Her voice trembled as if she was trying to convince herself. I wanted to scream out that Michael was no longer the man she once loved, but I kept my silence. I knew Sarah trusted him too much, and I didn't want to hurt her further while she was still in shock about Lily. I took Sarah's hand and spoke softly. "I don't want to argue, but I want you to be cautious. Let Lily stay with me for a few days." "Okay, I'll ask Mrs. Davis to watch her when I'm not home." Sarah hesitated, but eventually she nodded, perhaps because she too was afraid something else might happen. I hugged Lily again and whispered in her ear, "Grandma will protect you. Don't be scared." Lily nodded, though her eyes still shimmered with concern, as if she could sense the darkness encircling our family. That night I returned to the gas station to inspect everything before heading home. However, the moment I opened the office door, I sensed something was amiss. The small rear window was forced open, its wooden frame splintered, and papers from the drawer were strewn across the floor. Heart-pounding, I hurried to the cellar hatch and checked the safe underneath. Fortunately, all was still secure: the money, the documents, the USB drive. Yet a new long, deep scratch marred the cellar hatch, as if someone had tried to pry it open with a metal bar. I sank to the floor, clutching my head, feeling as if my world was collapsing around me. The enemy was not merely watching me, he had already taken action and was fully aware of the hiding spot. I grabbed my phone and immediately called Mr. Thompson, trembling as I recounted everything that had happened. Thompson was expecting, but I felt the weight of what was to come. As I waited in the dim light, shadows danced on the walls, and every sound seemed amplified. When he finally arrived, his face was set with determination, and I could see the gravity of the situation reflected in his eyes. We exchanged no words for a moment, simply nodding in understanding before beginning to plan our next move. The threat was real, and the shadows closing in meant we had little time left to act. With a deep breath, I steeled myself for the confrontation ahead, knowing that the safety of Sarah and Lily depended on what we would do next. Thompson was bringing someone, but after last night's call, he had promised to bring someone who could reveal David's secret. When Mr. Thompson's black car pulled up in front of the station, I saw a woman step out walking with a steady stride and a gaze as sharp as a knife. She wore a dark coat, her hair pulled back, and although her face bore the marks of years, her expression was one of unwavering determination. Mr. Thompson introduced her to me in a serious tone. "Emily, this is Helen Vance, David's partner. She sought me out after learning of his death because she wanted to continue some of the work he left unfinished." I looked at Helen, trying to hide my confusion. "Partner?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. I didn't understand. David was the owner of a gas station, a simple man who loved his family and his work. What did he have to do with partners? Helen stepped closer, her gaze fixed intently on mine, unwavering. "Mrs. Emily," she said firmly, "your husband wasn't just the owner of a gas station as you thought. He was a CIA intelligence collaborator, and for many years, that gas station served as a secret transit point for the organization." Her words hit me like a direct blow to the chest. I staggered backwards, bracing myself on the edge of the table to avoid falling. The CIA, David, the man I had shared a bed with for over 30 years, the one who talked to me about simple dreams, was an agent. I shook my head, refusing to believe it. "What are you talking about?" "David never. He couldn't. I knew nothing." But before I could finish, Helen pulled out an old ID from her pocket and handed it to me. My hands trembled as I took it, and when I saw David's photo with his familiar smile, but bearing a strange name, Carlos Mendoza, along with a secret code, I felt as if the floor was opening beneath me. "This is the proof," Helen said, her voice steady but commanding. "David worked with us for over 20 years. The gas station was a cover, a place where he received and transferred information about international criminal activities. You may not believe it, but it's the truth." I sank into the chair, holding my head, struggling to process what I had just heard. David, the man I loved, Sarah's father, the one who brought me coffee every morning, had been living a secret life that I had never suspected. A wave of pain and anger washed over me. Why didn't he tell me? Why conceal all of this for so many years? But then I recalled the moments when I saw him lost in thought, a distant look in his eyes, as if burdened by a weight he couldn't share. Perhaps he was trying to protect me, to shield Sarah by hiding the truth from us. Helen didn't let me dwell too long on my emotions. "We don't have much time," she said, signaling for me to open the hatch. I led her and Mr. Thompson to the concealed basement, where the documents and USB drives were still kept in the safe. Helen opened a file, her eyes scanning the pages with the sharp focus of a hawk. "This is what David had compiled," she explained, gesturing toward the numbers and symbols in a leather-bound notebook. Lists of money laundering routes, the names of shell companies, and even politicians under surveillance. David had dedicated many years to this work, and he had done it with great skill. I stood quietly to the side, observing in silence until Helen opened a file and pointed to a name, Delgado Group, Inc. My heart seemed to stop. I gasped, my voice trembling. "That's my son-in-law, Michael's company." Helen nodded without surprise. "Exactly." David had been suspicious of Michael for some time. Perhaps he had uncovered something close to him and had begun monitoring him. She pulled out an old, somewhat blurry photograph taken from a distance. I recognized a younger Michael standing beside a group of men circled in red. These men, Helen explained, were targets of intelligence operations. Some had already been arrested, but Michael remained at large until now. Mr. Thompson, who had stayed silent until this moment, spoke in a serious voice. "There's no longer any doubt, Emily. Michael is involved in the illegal money laundering network that David had been investigating. He probably knew that this gas station contained evidence, which is why he was so determined to buy it at any cost. I clutched the file tightly, feeling a heavy weight pressing down on my chest. Fear, anger, and pain swirled within me. Michael wasn't merely threatening me. He wasn't just pressuring me to acquire the gas station. He was part of the very corruption David had spent his whole life fighting against. And now, that burden was placed squarely on my shoulders. I looked at Helen, my voice trembling. So, David left me the gas station for this reason. He wanted me to carry on his work. Helen placed a hand on my shoulder, her gaze softening slightly. David trusted you, Emily. He knew you were strong enough to protect your family and do the right thing. This gas station isn't just an inheritance, it's a weapon, and now it's in your hands. Her words burned like a flame, terrifying me, but also igniting my blood with determination. I thought about Lily, recalling the terrified expression in my little girl's eyes when she was nearly abducted. I remembered Sarah and her unwavering blind faith in her cruel husband, and I reflected on David, who had led a secret life to keep us safe. Clutching the file, I felt as though it was a part of David himself, a final message from him. What do I need to do now? I asked, my voice quiet but resolute. Helen looked at me with a faint smile lingering on her lips. We're going to use this very gas station to catch Michael, but you need to be prepared, Emily. This won't be an easy fight. Mr. Thompson nodded and added, I'll support you in any way I can. But from now on, you must be more cautious than ever. Michael doesn't work alone. After Helen and Mr. Thompson left, I stayed in the basement, the flashlight casting light over the files. A mixture of fear and resolve filled me. David had entrusted me not just with a gas station, but with a mission, to protect our family and seek justice. This battle was not only for me, it was for Sarah, Lily, and the man I loved who had given everything to keep us safe. The next morning, I found myself sitting at the gas station with a heart weighed down like a stone. I had called Sarah, asking her to come alone and to keep Michael in the dark. Every time I considered telling my daughter the truth, my heart felt like it was shattering. Sarah, the girl I loved more than life itself, had spent her youth trusting and loving Michael. How could I tell her that the man she cared for was a criminal, someone willing to threaten his own family to get what he wanted? But I knew I had no choice. The truth, no matter how painful, had to be revealed. I clasped the cross around my neck, praying silently for the strength to face this pivotal afternoon. When Sarah stepped into the gas station, I immediately noticed her exhausted face, her eyes swollen as if she had cried all night. She embraced me, but it was a feeble hug, as if she could barely hold herself upright. Mom, what's wrong? Why did you call me so urgently? Sarah's voice quivered with concern. I led her into the office where Helen was already seated beside a pile of documents from the basement. Helen's cold gaze intensified the already tense atmosphere. I pulled out a chair for Sarah, trying to keep my voice steady. Sit down, sweetheart. Your mom and Mrs. Vance have something to tell you. It's about Michael. Sarah frowned, her gaze slightly defensive. About Michael? Mom, what does he have to do with all this? I took a deep breath and placed my hand on her shoulder. Sarah, I know this is hard to believe, but you need to listen to me. Michael is not the person you think he is. I signaled to Helen, who then spread several documents across the table, numbers, symbols, lists of companies. Everything pointed to Delgado Group Inc., Michael's company. I pointed at the name, my voice breaking. This is the proof. Michael is connected to an illegal money laundering network. Your father investigated it for years. Sarah shook her head, her trembling hand brushing against the documents, but she dared not open them. It can't be, Mom. Michael simply conducts normal business. He works diligently. He cares for me. He looks after Lily. How could he? Her voice faded as if she were trying to convince herself. I felt my heart break seeing the desperation in my daughter's eyes. I wanted to embrace her and reassure her that everything would be fine, but the truth wouldn't allow it. Helen, without hesitation, placed an old, blurry, yet clear photograph on the table. In the picture, a younger Michael appeared alongside a group of men circled in red. These men, Helen said coldly, are criminals the CIA was tracking. Half of them are already in prison. Michael is one of the ones who got away. Sarah stared at the photo, her hand covering her mouth, tears filling her eyes. No, it can't be, she whispered. Then she broke down crying. Oh my God, I had trusted and loved a man like that for so many years, without knowing anything. Sarah's sobs tore me apart inside. I pulled her into my arms, holding her tightly, feeling her tears soak through my clothes. "Forgive me, Sarah," I whispered, my voice choking with emotion. "I didn't want to hurt you, but I had to tell you because I don't want you or Lily to be in danger." Sarah clung to me crying, and I felt as if I was breaking apart as well. I had already lost David, and now I was dragging my daughter into a nightmare she didn't deserve. At that moment, the gas station door suddenly swung open. Lily, her hair tied in a ponytail, ran inside. Her innocent face lit up when she saw her mother. "Mommy, I saw your car outside," she exclaimed excitedly. But then she stopped, confused by the scene. Sarah crying on my chest, holding me tightly, and Helen with paper spread out on the table. Lily approached cautiously, her voice gentle. "Grandma, what's wrong with Mommy? Is everything okay?" Before I could respond, she overheard Michael's name and heard something Helen said. Lily hurried to me, embraced me tightly, and asked with fear in her voice, "Grandma, is Daddy going to hurt us?" Her innocent words felt like a knife piercing through me. I knelt down, held her close, and tried to soothe her. "No, my love, Grandma won't let anyone hurt you," I assured her, though inside I was consumed with rage. Michael was not only threatening me, he was not just deceiving Sarah, he had also made my granddaughter live in constant fear. I gently stroked Lily's hair, forcing a smile to comfort her, yet her eyes remained filled with worry, as if she sensed the darkness looming over our family. Sarah wiped her tears, looked at me and Helen, her voice trembling but resolute. "Mom, I'm going to help. We have to stop him before it's too late." I gazed at her, feeling a mixture of pride and pain. Despite being shattered by betrayal, Sarah still chose to stand up for Lily, for our family. Helen nodded, a flicker of approval lighting her eyes. "Good. We need your cooperation, Sarah. Michael is desperate to acquire this gas station, and we plan to exploit that to catch him." Mr. Thompson, who had remained silent until then, finally spoke. "The only option is to use Star as bait. Michael probably already suspects that this gas station contains evidence capable of destroying him, and he won't stop until he obtains it. This is where it all comes to a head." I nodded, though an uneasy feeling churned inside me. The idea of confronting Michael and his allies made my stomach tighten. Yet, as I watched Sarah and Lily embrace her mother, I realized I couldn't turn away. I had already lost David, but I refused to lose my daughter and granddaughter as well. The Star gas station, with all its secrets, had become my battlefield. I reached for Sarah's hand and whispered, "Mom promises you we will get through this together." Sarah nodded, her eyes still red but shining with a flicker of resolve. Lily looked up at me and softly murmured, "Grandma, I trust you." The little girl's words gave me renewed strength. I looked up at the sky and whispered a prayer. "David, if you're watching me, please help me protect this family." Almost immediately, Helen made a call to a Mexican intelligence officer. Then she turned to me, her voice serious but steady. "We're going to catch Michael red-handed right here, Emily. This gas station will be the final trap." I nodded, but my heart was pounding. Not from fear, but from the certainty that everything was about to end, either with Michael or my family. I couldn't allow my daughter and granddaughter to face any more danger. The plan was clear. I would call Michael, pretending to agree to sell the gas station, so he would walk right into the trap. Helen and the agents would set up recording devices and cameras while intelligence agencies surrounded the area, ready to act. It sounded simple, but when I picked up the phone, my hands trembled so much I almost dropped it. I took a deep breath and looked at Helen, who nodded encouragingly. "You can do this, Emily. For David, for Sarah, for Lily." Her words gave me strength, but they also reminded me of what was at stake. Not justice, but the safety of those I cared about most. I dialed Michael's number. Each ring felt like a hammer blow to my chest. When his voice answered, smug and smooth as always, I forced my own voice to sound calm. "Michael, I've thought it over," I said, my voice trembling slightly, but I kept my tone steady. "There's no point in holding on to this gas station. I'll sign the transfer tomorrow. Bring your partner." On the other end, Michael let out a laugh, his tone fake. "You won't regret it, I promise. I'll be there tomorrow around noon, maybe around 11, Guess." I hung up, still clutching the phone, feeling like I'd crossed a line of no return. Helen patted my shoulder. "Very good. Now, let's get ready." That night, Helen and I stayed at the gas station. The silence was oppressive. We operated in the faint glow of flashlights, meticulously concealing the cameras in discreet locations. One was hidden inside the fire extinguisher mounted on the wall, another beneath the cash register counter, and a third was concealed on the basement ceiling. Every movement Helen made was swift and precise, as if she had performed the task countless times. I observed her, pondering whether David had been the same, silent, determined, living in a world of danger I had never known. I hesitated to ask Helen about him, about his days working for the CIA, but I didn't dare. I was afraid that the truth would cause even more pain. Sarah took Lily to Mrs. Davis's house to ensure her safety. Before leaving, the little girl rushed over and embraced me, her large eyes filled with distress. "Grandma, my daddy is bad, isn't he?" Lily whispered softly, yet her voice was so piercing that it struck my heart. I knelt down, hugged her tightly, and tried to smile. "I won't let your daddy hurt anyone, my love. I promise." Lily nodded, though her eyes remained clouded with doubt, as if she could already sense the shadow looming over our family. When Sarah took her away, I watched their figures depart, my heart feeling torn apart. That night, as Helen and I inspected the equipment, a distant engine sound reached us. My body jolted and my heart pounded loudly in my chest. Helen signaled for us to turn off the lights, and we hurriedly hid behind the counter, peering through a crack in the door. A strange car pulled up near the gas station, its headlights sweeping across the windows, forcing me to squint. Two men stepped out, one holding a phone and directing a flashlight at the station, the other taking pictures, the flash piercing the darkness. I overheard their voices, sharp and hurried. "It has to be here. That old woman couldn't have taken it anywhere else." I clenched Helen's hand tightly, feeling short of breath. She whispered, her tone cold. "They've sensed something. Tomorrow will be more dangerous than we expected." She pulled a small radio from her pocket and spoke softly. "Alpha Team tracked the two targets as they left the gas station. Do not act without orders." A barely audible response from the device reminded me, offering some reassurance that we weren't alone. Yet, the fear persisted. Those men, though not Michael, were unquestionably his operatives, and they were hunting for what David had left behind. When the car drove away, I sank to the floor, hands clutching my head. Helen sat beside me silently, her presence providing a sense of companionship amid the chaos. "Are you okay?" she asked softly, her voice gentler than I'd ever heard before. I nodded, unable to hide my fear. "I'm scared. Scared of failing. Scared I won't be able to protect Sarah and Lily. I even fear facing the truth about David." Helen gently placed a hand on my shoulder, her gaze full of tenderness. "David chose you because he knew you were strong enough. Not everyone dares to enter this fight, Emily, but you are, and I know you will succeed." Her words bolstered my spirit, yet they also highlighted the heavy burden I carried. I gazed into the darkness beyond the door, fully aware that the following day would determine everything. Michael was coming with his supporters, and I had to be prepared. By midday, the Chicago sky displayed an odd shade of blue, but I had no inclination to appreciate it. I remained inside the gas station office, my heartbeat pounding in my chest, my hand clutching the cross around my neck. Today, everything would come to a head. I had readied myself, yet fear seeped into every breath I took. The sound of an approaching engine signaled Michael's arrival. His polished truck halted directly in front of the door, obstructing the entrance like a declaration of war. Michael stepped out, followed by four men with stern faces and eyes as piercing as knives. I instantly recognized two of them, one with a long scar running down his cheek, the same man who had hurled a beer bottle at me and laughed that night. The other, moving slowly, must have been the one who had taken photographs of the gas station. I had never seen the other two, but the way they looked at me sent a chill down my spine. Michael entered the room and threw a stack of documents onto the table, the sound of paper hitting wood echoing sharply. "Mom, sign," he said, his voice harsh and devoid of the usual artificiality. "Leave the rest to me." One of the men, tall with a shaved head, drew a pistol from his belt and placed it on the table as a warning. The metallic gleam reflected in the sunlight, causing me to freeze. I feigned trembling, drew the papers closer and slowly flipped through the pages, trying to stall for time. "I need to read this carefully first," I murmured weakly, though inside I was counting every second awaiting Helen's signal. From behind the counter, I sensed Helen's presence. She still had her hand on the gun, concealed in her coat, poised to act. I glanced at her. Our eyes locked for a moment, and I understood that the moment had come. I picked up the pen. I pretended to prepare to sign, but at that moment, the gas station door suddenly burst open. A squad of CIA agents stormed in, guns raised, shouting loudly, "Freeze!" "Hands up!" Their shouts reverberated through the entire room, and I watched as Michael's face turned pale and he jumped. One of Michael's men, the one with the scar, tried to lift his weapon, but Helen struck like a lightning bolt, kicking his hand forcefully. The gun clattered to the floor. Helen quickly pinned him down with her knee, pressing against his back with the resolve of a seasoned fighter. The agent swiftly subdued the others, handcuffing them amid shouts and curses. Michael was pushed against the table, his hands twisted behind his back as he yelled, "You have no right to arrest me. This is a setup to frame me. I'll sue you." His voice cracked with desperation as the agents dragged him outside. I stood there, the pen still clenched in my hand, watching the scene unfold as if in a dream. Suddenly, I saw Sarah appear at the door, her face pale and tears streaming down her cheeks. She watched as Michael was taken away, her eyes filled with a mixture of pain and confusion. "Mom," Sarah whispered, drawing closer to me. I hugged her tightly, feeling every trembling breath she took. I couldn't believe it. He truly was like that. Sarah's voice trembled, and I could only hold her even more firmly, fighting back my own tears. I wanted to say something to soothe her, but my throat closed up. How could I ease my daughter's suffering when she had given her entire heart to a criminal? The agents began to search the basement, gathering all the documents, USB drives, and money that David had left behind. They moved swiftly, professionally, sealing each item before taking it away. The basement, once David's secret refuge, was now empty, as if its purpose had been fulfilled. I watched with a conflicted feeling of relief and emptiness. Everything David had built, everything he had sacrificed for, was now exposed, but the cost was my family's pain. That night, the Star gas station remained illuminated by the flashing lights of patrol cars and reporters' cameras, creating a scene filled with chaos. News of the incident spread rapidly, revealing that Stargation had uncovered an international money laundering network. Helen stood before the journalists, speaking briefly about the arrests, making no mention of David's or the CIA's intelligence operations at all. I stood in a corner, silently observing, feeling as if I had entered another world. Everything that had transpired, from the bronze key in the secret basement to today's confrontation, seemed like a nightmare. I still couldn't comprehend how I had survived. Months later, once everything had calmed, I sat in an old wooden chair in the gas station office, watching the afternoon light fall on the rusty gas pumps. The Star was now quiet, with no sign of strangers or Michael's taunts. Sarah entered, placed her hand on my shoulder, and spoke softly, warmly. "Mom, you did it. You saved Lily. You saved me. You completed Dad's last mission. I am certain he can now rest in peace." I glanced at her and noticed that her eyes shone brighter, though a lingering sadness remained within them. Sarah proved to be stronger than I had originally thought, and that realization filled me with pride. Lily ran toward me, embraced me tightly, her face glowing with a radiant smile. "Grandma, I knew you were a superhero," she exclaimed, and I let out a relieved laugh. I held Lily close, feeling her warmth, and knew that a new, beautiful chapter of life was about to begin for us. The Star gas station, with all its secrets and dangers, was once again exactly what it should have always been, a quiet place that aids good travelers on their journey without drawing attention. I looked out at the arid fields stretching into the distance, thought of David, and whispered to myself, "You can rest easy now." I did it. I clutched my cross tightly, feeling as if he were smiling somewhere beyond, and I truly believed that amid all the loss and pain, I had managed to find myself again. The story we tell is fictional, but it is rooted in some real events. The names and locations have been altered to protect the identities of those involved. We do not disclose this to the judge, but rather in the hope that someone will listen and pause to reflect. How many mothers are suffering quietly within their own homes? I am genuinely curious. If you were in my position, what would you do? Would you choose to remain silent to keep the peace, or would you have the courage to confront everything in order to find your voice again? I want to hear your thoughts, because every story is a candle that can illuminate someone else's path. God always blesses, and I truly believe that bravery guides us toward better days. Meanwhile, at the end of the video, I am sharing 2 of the channel's most beloved stories. I assure you they will surprise you. Thank you for watching until the very end.